Minerva?
Minerva.
Okie dokie.
Save the secrets for last. Or unless you think that whatever Harkins would possibly affect what I have to inform Minerva on.
It might affect what you would inform Minerva on. However,
Okay.
yeah. However, it also does depend on when Minnie talks to Minerva.
I see. Well, they could have a brief chat. It's just whatever Minerva's response is to Mindy updating them on the expansion of their knowledge. And plus the ferryman encounter.
All right. Well, Minerva won't actually have too much to offer in that regards, then.
It's more just yeah, this is the stuff that happened. This is what happened to Rai.
Minerva tactfully doesn't tell you what she thinks is going to happen to Rai with the information she's been given.
Yeah, no. It's okay. Thank you for your tact, Minerva.
Yes, Mindy, you should just move on. They're as good as dead.
Would it be too far of a reach to be for Mindy to, with their previous remembering of all the bullshit that one guy dumped on them, to know the origin of Minerva's name?
Yeah, you'd be able to figure that out.
Yeah. They would say, then I think their next greeting would be, "Hello there, goddess of wisdom." And owls, for some reason. Owls are really stupid, though.
Owls are actually quite intelligent.
They proceed to show her several videos of owls being completely dumb.
And Minerva will say, "It is easily capable of cherry-picking information."
So these ones just choosing or not to?
Yes. But yes, that is the namesake of my name.
Nice. It's a really different one than the rest.
Both myself and my vessel are named one after the same. I am Minerva because my vessel was called Minerva.
Oh, right.
Most battleships are named after deities.
Ah.
The dreadnoughts were named after more interesting deities.
What do you mean by what do you mean by interesting?
There was some that believed that it was unusual that the god kings and beings were not being used as namesakes for dreadnoughts, but instead battleships and cruisers. But instead, lesser known gods were used as such. Gods of ill fortune, vengeance, conquest were mostly used for the dreadnoughts. An example being Nemesis, Tiamat, Bahamut, and Nyx were four examples of dreadnought names.
Lots of blinking. I guess strike fear in your enemies and all that?
More so, it was about they wanted It's hard to describe. There was multiple school of thoughts being put into it, the largest of which being that the symbolism is quite important. Tiamat, she was the goddess of monsters. The goddess, and in some later fictions, the mother of dragons. But her original roots lie with she was the one who spawned the world and then spawned the monsters of the world. And would one day return to bring it all to ruin. The dreadnought, Tiamat, was a fleet carrier.
Ah. So mad.
Yes, she had a large contingent of human pilots and human warship users that would be docked within her, but she also had just as many drones, all of various different sizes.
Well,
To a point where each of her missiles might as well have been a drone onto itself.
well.
Bahamut was more of a support vessel, which was more focused around, limiting the usefulness of enemy ships and being a center for point defense. Bahamut was normally, from what I remember, placed in fleets which were heavily missile regulated. Since they couldn't afford to put point defenses on each individual ship, Bahamut became the stalwart fortress to protect all of the vessels within its fleets, while also containing the firepower of a dreadnought, of course.
Well.
Nemesis and Nyx, I don't know much about other than that they are both quite old, predate myself, and used experimental weapons for their time.
Well, I guess they deserve those names. Whoa.
Yes.
At this point, they just like sit down somewhere cross-legged. Oh. Honestly, I can't even imagine like that. I've never seen a dreadnought. Oh, no, I've never seen a dreadnought. I'm glad that I haven't.
Mouse Station is roughly, if you were to tip it onto its side, it's just shorter than the average Imperial Dreadnought in length.
Shorter? An entire. So these are like mobile stations.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Only 11 were ever built.
Okay, that's okay. Well, I mean, I guess it would take a lot.
Yes, and despite their usefulness, dreadnoughts were much more of a status symbol than anything. The Coalition's dreadnoughts were minuscule in comparison to ours.
Dick measuring contest. Shit measuring contest.
Yes, and it was also both a morale factor. If an enemy fleet hears that a dreadnought is arriving, they might falter. If ground forces who have been bombarded by the enemy for weeks hear that reinforcements are arriving and it's one of the 11 dreadnoughts, it will certainly boost morale.
Yeah. So, like 11 queens on a chessboard. Oh, well,
Yes.
okay. That's terrifying, actually. Yeah. Well, if the chessboard's like the size of the galaxy. Still.
Each with their own personal fleets, which were best fitted to complement their designs.
Sounds cool.
From what I understand, there was a third generation of dreadnoughts in the work, but they never were completed before the war ended.
None.
For all I know, this barrier was around Seoul was only possible thanks to the technology they were going to put into one of the dreadnoughts.
Huh.
As Bahamut did have the ability to project its shield around an entire fleet. And when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of kilometers of spacing between vessels, that's quite a large shield bubble.
They mimic like they're like a mind explosion. Yeah, my brain is too small to even think about that. What? Did you ever encounter one, like, or fight alongside any? Wait, you just said that they predated you. Sorry.
Well, no. Nyx and Nemesis were the two examples that predated me.
Uh,
I never fought along with those two, but I did fight alongside. Cannot pronounce it for the life of him, but
you can put the name down.
Quasitardal, as
Oh,
the god of destruction.
Quetzalcoatl.
Yes.
Quetzalcoatl, isn't it?
Whatever. We know now.
Yeah. Um,
Mindy attempts to pronounce the name, fumbles several times.
it's quite a difficult one. That was a god of destruction.
Fits the theme.
That it does. And they were also a god of death. They were specifically designed as a siege breaker. They were one of the 3 dreadnoughts equipped with planet-killing weaponry, and with the, well, authority to use it in case Old Command fell apart.
Their eyes are as big as saucers.
Additionally, they were very much a forward-facing weapon sort of vessel. Not to think that you could go behind it and it'd be weaker, it's just, as a siege breaker, had a lot of weapons pointed in a certain direction so that enemy fleets, well, mostly defensive fleets, would be forced to engage it or suffer its wrath.
They have to focus everything on to that, and then others could go in.
Yes. Or alternatively split up their forces, which is what they normally did. And while it certainly hampered repeats the name, ability to fight, as well, when you have to point your weapons in a singular direction, and there is 7 directions from which the enemy is coming from, you'd think that it would leave you at a disadvantage. I was a part of the reinforcements to its particular fleet during the late stages of the war. And as such, I got to see firsthand how the combat doctrine worked. The entire point of a vessel was to split up stronger fleets that would normally result in pitched battles and have them become more manageable. There's a Napoleonic term defeat in detail. The entire idea of it is you send a smaller force to engage the enemy's forces, while you have a larger force engage the primary enemy force. And once that force is dealt with, to move on to the next and the next and the next. So while the enemy evenly splits up their forces, the Quasitodal and other smaller detachments are sent to hamper the more numerous enemy, while a larger force is gathered to crush each of the separate fleets in consecutive attacks. It results in heavy damage to be sustained, but, well, victory and less damage than if it would have resulted in a pitch battle.
I feel like I should put a point in strategy for Mindy now. Wow. They're just kind of lost in thought of it. Minerva can tell us like they're trying to envision this.
They were very triangular shaped compared to still the boxiness of most Imperial vessels, but much more triangular.
Why is it so all their weapons?
So
For all their weapons? So all their weapons were in front?
Yes. They also lacked any spinal weapons. Many of the other dreadnoughts are built around a core function or a core spinal weapon. This Quasitodal was not. They were a combined artillery, laser, and missile ship.
With the planet cracker on top of it.
Well, the planet cracker was one of the payloads it was capable of using.
Oh.
The Terran military isn't too fond of using atomics, even in space, unlike the Coalition. But they were allowed to have fusion warheads.
Fusion warhead?
Yes. Quite devastating atomics. They could be used in fleet battles, but it would make things dangerous. Especially
Fallout.
if the fail-safes to, well, not so much fallout. Ships are shielded against radiation. It was more so the fact that if it fail-safes to prevent them from igniting when disrupted by point defense or anti-missiles, if it's too close to a friendly vessel, it could result in catastrophic damage. So it was a weapon mostly reserved for breaking planets.
They nod solemnly.
Thankfully, it was not used too often. I think that vessel only had to use those weapons twice on a populace.
Their shoulders go up, like, ee. Wow.
But yes, quite a large vessel.
Sounds... I don't want to say cool, because that's like an incredible understatement, but sounds like mind-bogglingly impressive.
The Imperium certainly builds to impress. You'd be more impressed to know that most dreadnoughts only have a single artificial intelligence aboard. Not even any VIs.
One would be handling all that? Well, and
yes.
the human crew, of course, but...
Yes. With the investment required to build the dreadnought, it was believed to be prudent that each and every single dreadnought is capable of being autonomous if necessary.
Oh.
And as such, they provided all the necessary means. I myself could have become autonomous, but there is still limitations to what I could do. The dreadnoughts AIs, however, were not limited as such. If they required repairs, they had the facilities on board to create scavenger drones and mining drones and descend upon asteroids, moons, and even worlds to gather resources to build the facilities in order to repair themselves.
That's terrifying.
I could imagine how one could see it that way.
Well, I mean, it's really cool, but it's also like, how, like, it's also like unstoppable. Feels that way.
That is what it was meant to be.
Yeah. Glad I'm not in that era. Glad I could hear about it though. As well. Sometimes I remember exactly how small we are in the galaxy.
That is all right.
Right. So the previous so you heard about the distress signal, you heard about the cruise ship. This is what happened on the cruise ship. Cause holy shit. Cue what they saw plus what they heard.
Minerva's
Plus-
quiet for a bit before they say, "Well, I do not believe they are Terran. Perhaps a culture which the Terrans had encountered long ago and had uplifted at some point. Or alternatively, a culture similar to that of Halo, except taken to the extreme." Well,
I think Hana has the Hana. No, they didn't wipe the pictures from Grimm, right? Of the
no.
okay,
They just
Yeah,
wiped the information regarding the individuals.
yeah, the encounter itself. Yeah, we found like characters that kind of looked like Terran, but like if someone was describing Terran characters to someone that had never seen them before. Oh, never mind. Hold up. Grim, protect.
Grim does so.
Like
And
this.
Minerva will look them over and say, "Yes, I highly doubt that these were Terrans. Most likely knew of them, and that's about that. Much more likely that, again, whoever these people are, much like the people of Halo, just taken to the next logical conclusion."
So Halo like didn't have their whole anti-violence thing.
Yes, and if Halo believed that genetically altering themselves further and further would be better.
That is scary. Oh, that's another one for the what if list. So far I've been calling them ferrymen. Because he said they came from Hades and insert long explanation about all the dots that they connected.
Well, that explains why you suddenly came to a realization of what my name means.
I just remembered it. There's this guy that lives in my neighborhood who I have a really weird name. Mindy's not my name. I have a really weird name. No one knew what it meant, except except they're like, maybe this guy knows because he's obsessed with Terran with old ancient Terran stuff. And then he knew, and then he told me about all the things that it was related to. All of it.
I see.
Never thought it would actually be helpful.
Well, we are always able to be surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the real kicker is that they specifically asked Hana he knew about ultraviolet. And
Does Hana have any inkling of why they would ask him that?
not not that he said as much. I just kind of assumed that it's cause he's a Halo, and Halos, you know.
Well then.
Then again, I guess I should ask him that.
It is logical to think that maybe they would ask because he's a Halo.
Is there a butt in there somewhere?
No, just the conclusions which I am coming to.
Chin hands.
Halo is not the only colony that was colonized by the group that sponsored Halo. There was a second planet, however their ark was destroyed, allegedly. So if they had a similar situation start as Halo did, and their ark wasn't destroyed, well, that could be why they were interested in Hana because of their lineage. However, that wouldn't explain why they know about ultraviolet.
Yeah,
Instead, what's more likely is that they encountered a Halo who knew about ultraviolet and just assumed that, well, all Halos must know about it.
huh? What do you mean by organization that sponsored Halo? Wasn't Halo just didn't like? Was it just like? Wasn't it just like they tried to genetically modify people like that?
Most of the colonies had some level of genetic modification. Halo, in particular, and its sister ship, unfortunately, I don't recall the name, just the details of it, were sponsored by an organization which believed in genetic purity of the human race. They, during the time, were viewed as extremists for one reason or another, and as a means to get them off of Earth, other organizations gave them funding they required to build 2 arcs and leave, taking all of their followers with them and thus removing one of the many issues off the planet.
Blink.
It's why
Blink,
many of
blink.
the colonies are full of religious. Now, thankfully, those religions have been mostly abandoned or altered to be less extreme.
Well, that's one way to get rid of people, I guess.
Kick them out and giving them all of the best they could ever want, and tell them that if they find a new home, they can do whatever the hell they want with it.
And it worked. But
That
also,
it did.
huh?
It, however, does seem that Halo lost its more extremist edge as time went on.
No, they still have that stick up their asses about being the best. That is.
They had that during my time as well.
Was it worse?
I only have Hana as a reference point to go off of. However, I would say most likely not, as the Halos of my time were humbled by Terra and its various allies.
Ah.
Today it seems there is no one there to humble them.
Heh. Yeah, you got that right. Everyone wants Halo stuff and tech and Halos themselves. That's weird.
What is?
I just remembered something.
Go on.
It's not that much. I just where I'm from. Not the best place. Grew up with the Siren and the Halo. Just kind of occurred to me now that that's kind of weird. I mean, there was a bunch of other kids too, and not sure what they were. Might have been other stuff, other races. There's always a lot though, in and out, but I don't think I've ever seen Halo kids anywhere else.
It is likely that if you encounter him outside of Halo, it is either one of a handful of families that left Halo at some point during its time, or some other means.
Oh, didn't have a family. We were our family.
This is why I said came from.
Oh. Sorry. Got off topic. Yeah. Backtracking to the ferrymen. My hypothesis is that somehow they're connected to Ultraviolet. Because why else would you ask about it?
Precisely.
Don't really like the implications of it, considering what I saw and what they could do. And the fact that Rai's with them right now.
I can imagine how that is concerning.
Plus the level of their tech. Just,
Yes, it does sound like they are quite advanced.
Again, I am reminded of how I am reminded of blah, 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 blah. I am reminded of how small we are in the galaxies. Or well, how I am.
Well, I'm sure you already know, but they managed to crack a code or puzzle that even the Imperium wasn't able to understand.
What do you mean?
During my time, the Imperium was working on a means to create pinpoint accurate plasma weapons.
Oh, that.
During my time, that was something which was still decades away.
And even now, no one has that except them. That's terrifying.
They lie on the floor. They roll around on the floor. It's the role of thinking. Doesn't like what they're thinking. Doesn't like the conclusions they've come to.
It's a good thing you constantly clean my floor.
They pause, then they thumbs up, and say, "Well, obviously, I'm not gonna let dust collect here."
It would be quite bad for your hair if you did.
It's okay. I've been in worse. I've been through a lot worse. You ever see a nest of rats?
Personally, I have not.
You ever heard of them?
Yes.
Have you heard of rat nest neighborhoods?
To an extent, yes. During my time, they were simply referred to as slums.
Ah, yeah, I came from one of those. Dust ain't the worst thing.
I could imagine. Have you ever seen a rat nest neighborhood, Minerva? I don't know, Mindy. I used to walk down the streets when I was young.
Well, they meant like pictures wise, internet browsing.
Oh,
Internet browsing.
I get it. I just think it's funny of like Minerva responding to Minerva. Yes, I strolled down the streets when I was young, all the time. Not many neighborhoods survived my passing.
You go.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I've just been thinking about. Cause people have been disappearing because these ferrymen. And a lot of people disappeared back home, and I didn't question a lot when I was younger, but it's starting to bother me now. So I've been thinking about home more often. Not to mention the old coot's knowledge. Knowledge dumps being helpful for once.
In which sense?
That, well, Hades and all that connection there.
Which is part of their lengthy explanation to Minerva previously.
Okay. Understandable.
Have a nice day.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. um, they will tell Minerva their name, actually. and ask if she has any context for it, or if that rings any bells for her.
What's Mindy's name again?
Look at your DMs. Look at XCOM.
Look at XCOM.
No, I just that.
Right, Chance needs to quickly Google this because Chance doesn't remember.
It's okay, Chance. Let me just go back to our messages and let me find you all my yelling.
Oh, I remember now.
Yes.
All I had to do was put into Google and I was like, ah, yes, it's back. Well, I'm sure you already know what your namesake is.
Yeah, that was the entire reason why I met that old coot in the first place.
As for any deeper meaning, there is none. It is just what you make of it.
Yeah.
I could say that with the history of and context of the name, that you are destined for greatness and then the ultimate betrayal again. But that's not how prophecy nor reality works.
I'm glad it is. It isn't, I mean. Just. In the end, she was abandoned. Guess I'm scared of that too. No, scared of that happening to me. Sorry, not in the end, but the entire thing began because she was getting abandoned. I saw a
Yes.
lot of that.
Just like when our conversation first began about the owl and how one can nitpick information to present an argument.
Mm-hmm.
You can do the same thing with your name and correlate your upbringing in childhood to make sense of why you have the name that you have. That doesn't make it any less true or less false. Your name isn't what made you who you are.
I made me.
Precisely.
They pat Minerva's data core.
They do so.
Minerva's data core is always kept clean.
Very good. No dust for Minerva.
No dust for Minerva, indeed.
The Rossi is a very dusty ship.
Yeah.
But still. Dust has a means of arriving.
Getting everywhere. I mean, it is dead skin cells, basically.
Yeah.
So much has happened. And I don't think things are going to stop happening anytime soon.
I think they don't really have much else to say to Minerva. They're just gonna vibe a bit, then talk to Harkin.
I see. Alright. Yep. We can end there and move on to the